Hi there, everyone. It's Claire Prothero here. I am going to show you a method in psychology from depth psychology, which I have been asked to share many, many times, and I have, and now I thought I will share it with everyone here. It has helped entrepreneurs and business owners and just sort of day-to-day understandings of why people do the things that they do. And I think we can all get quite sort of baffled. So if you're building a team, often you're going to find that you have to kind of keep asking. You may get some person on your team where you're having to keep asking them to do something, and there's all kinds of excuses coming or procrastinations. Which eventually, not telling you about problems that are happening on site until it's an absolute catastrophe. And so this method has really helped me massively in not getting totally entrenched in people's issues or frustrated, which brings out the tyrant and lashing out, where I start to dig a little deeper and say, what is actually going on? So I wanted to share this with you. This is a real gem. If you run a team, it also helps you understand your own behavior. So it's called the line of resistance. And what happens here is, as you can see right at the bottom, if I go to the bottom, we're seeing there's a trajectory where it goes subtle to more obvious, and you've got inefficient and ineffective. I'll just take myself out of the way there on the side. And if you look right at the bottom, you've got emotional issues that are driving conflict and remaining unresolved. So this is known as the line of resistance. And you can use this to understand your own behavior, why you're saying you want to do something and you're not doing it, you're procrastinating, you're delaying it, and then you get angry with yourself. Why your team, you keep saying to your team, why isn't this being done? And you have to follow up, and it's like you're this bottleneck in your business, and it's like exhausting trying to drive people. Now you have a tool that can help you. And how this tool works is, you first of all start off understanding that there's always going to be resistance. I mean, there's resistance in relationships, even in marriages. There's going to be conflict and resistance. People staying out later. What's that's a bit of a classic one. But any kind of resistance to help cleaning up around the house, there's always going to be some level of resistance, even in very loving relationships, close partnerships. So you can imagine in a team where you're there as work colleagues, but there isn't that huge, massive emotional investment, there's going to be conflict. So it's inevitable. That's the first thing to know, is that conflict is inevitable. But what you want to be doing is you want to be understanding the conflict before it gets right to the end, where there is separation and war. So if you start, the first starter of there's a tendency, there's a possibility of an emotional issue in your organization, and that could be maybe people feel that there's not clear roles and responsibilities, and then they get blamed for things that are not their responsibility, or they feel that there's poor communication, or there's not a clear divide about who's doing what, who's in what lane, and so it becomes pass the buck. So there's like a number of reasons, as you know, that would start to lead to conflict. And it would start off with jokes. So people would start making jokes about the particular issue. Let's move on. It then becomes sarcastic. I use a company where I went, I was doing on-site facilitation for them, and I went to their coffee place, and they had all these different beautiful coffees. And I said, isn't this just glorious? You've got all these coffees. And they said, they were joking, the staff, and they said, oh, they do it to keep us up working late at night. And so we stay here working, and they don't want us to sleep. And so I started, that's a bit of a sarcastic joke. Not necessarily is a problem, but is an indicative of a problem. Then people start making excuses why they're not fulfilling their work responsibilities, why they're late. And the frustration is, as business owners or leaders, we think, but that sounds true. Yes, the transport was late, or something with COVID related, or my child was up. That's okay, because there's truth in, obviously there's going to be truth in what people say. Well, that's not obvious. I'm saying you're going to be obviously listen to what people are saying, and there's truth in that. And so one can get misled. I always go, and this is how the method goes, when people make 3 excuses, then I know they're on the resistance line. And then this is where we can flip it to ourselves. If we're making excuses all the time, we are resistant. And then we need to say, what emotional issue is driving this inner conflict? You know, I kept saying I was going to sign a document and I didn't. And then I eventually had to say, I clearly don't want to sign this document. Why? What is the reason for it? So we can start to have a greater self-awareness, so we can understand ourselves. And this is where accountability comes in, where we start taking responsibility for our actions. Then you get gossip, where people are starting to gossip behind closed doors. It often happens in the tea room, or it happens in the loos. And then, you know, there's all the gossip in the loos and people walk out and act like everything's fine. As the problem continues in the organization, call it not clear roles and responsibilities, which leads to the blame game, the emotional issue still continues, and so the behavior, the conflict becomes worse, the unresolved conflict. All the while, people are becoming inefficient and ineffective because their energy is getting absorbed in this. Then we've got poor communication. That is when people are starting to, you know, I'm not speaking to Joe, you hand that to him. You know, avoiding people in passageways. This can kind of happen. Or you can have a go slow, where people, for instance, get an email and they know the etiquette is to reply, and they just push the delete button and they don't reply. They start to come in late. They actually slow down their work. They really start to dig their heels, and they purposefully are late with deadlines. The issue continues, and then you get disruption. This is when it gets a bit complicated, because there's normally one person that holds the emotional conflict for everyone else. We call them the kind of terrorist in the organization. Boom, boom, we think, great, let's get rid of the terrorist. And meanwhile, the issue is still there, and someone else takes up that post. We've all done it in our own lives, probably, where we've stuck our head out and been the warrior. And then there's times when other people have done it for us and we haven't needed to. If the issue continues, we start to have strike. This is when people are really starting to dig their heels in, not arrive for work, refusing to come to work. And then finally, if the issue continues, then we go over to separation wall conflict. And as I mentioned in my emailer, this can be used for countries. This has actually been used as a methodology to deal with issues in the Middle East, that level of conflict. So starting to understand the line of resistance. So yeah, it has helped me enormously in terms of understanding myself, my own internal procrastination and resistance, where I can start having a conversation. I can understand my team, the people that work for me, the relationships that I have. When I can see they're sort of making excuses or delaying, I just kind of nip it in the bud and go straight in for what is actually the issue. And then finally, it is great for teams and understanding where your team is at, because an individual can be in a place in different places, but your team as a whole could be somewhere. And the key is, as I mentioned and I showed in my emailer, that what you want to start doing is asking questions. And I would highly recommend you can use that freebie as a wonderful conversational starting point, because that freebie are very in-depth questions. They are looking at where a person is at their best and where they're at their worst. And that could possibly elicit some of the problems that may be emerging. So yeah, I've had amazing feedback from this in my own life and from business owners. I'm so happy to share it with you. I've been asked a number of times, and I've kind of always thought, oh, I don't know, are people going to benefit from it? But I just decided I was going to send it out there for you guys. And I think now more than ever, to help us build that connection and understand each other and have more grace and compassion, as well as teaching people to be accountable and understand themselves and take ownership for their actions, because that's where we know the liberation truly is. Okay, bye for now. I hope that this has been helpful. Hang on to it. If you don't need it now, maybe down the line, but happy to share it with you.